Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Let's see if we can find some shade here. Sun's getting a little bit low in the sky. Coming to you from Scott Carver Threshers Association, Jordan, Minnesota. And look at all of the Minneapolis-Molines out here. That is the feature this year. This is Thursday evening. The show starts tomorrow, Friday morning. And we're set up with the prototype crawler, and we've got a good spot for X231, the static display that I put together for that. So it's the perfect time to do a little bit of a pre-show walk around, just see what all's here so far. And right away we see a Minneapolis-Moline ZB. And of course the ZB is the tractor that X231, the prototype to the 445, is loosely based off of. You can see the radiator top tank is the same. The front grille screens are much the same, but pretty much everything beyond that is quite a bit different. And trying to work the glare here because the sun's coming in awfully hard from this other direction. Minneapolis-Moline looks like a square baler, and look at this, you can still see the Balemaster 760 on the twine box. Original condition, I would say. So got the bale counter on the side down there. A lot of the safety decals are still in place. Yep, model 760. Tag is still legible as well. We'll probably get walkarounds of these two later. It's not a good time right now, but UDLX Open and UDLX Comfort Tractor. These are very, very nice inside. Very nice all around. G1350, from the biggest of the big on down to the small. Garden tractors here. We got a 108 on the end and a 110, a 112. Here's a 114. It's got a Johnson workhorse front end loader on it. Even has a little grade indicator for your flat bucket. Look at that. What do we have here? It's an LP 5-star. Single front wheel, 1957. Kind of a brute of a tractor for its day. All the LP regulators and everything over here. And here we have, it's an aftermarket cab. It's a Z, no, it's an RTI industrial. Next to that, R with a cab. These R's with cabs are quite the rare beast. I drove one of these one time. It didn't belong to me. It was at a tractor show. I was asked to parade it, and pretty cramped in there. Very, very collectible tractor though. And then we've got this small gazebo building. This is the tent under the canopy under which we're gonna do the X231 static display. We'll assemble all that in there tomorrow, but here are the rarest of the rare. So we've got X253 parked over here, and I've got the information board with the archive photos at hand. But this is another prototype crawler on this side here. So having these two crawlers in the same place is really something, because this was the initial idea. The sales pitched all the suits. This secured the funding then to develop more prototypes and really get serious about a crawler line, and this followed. Now both of these tractors are heavily based off of a 445 utility, all right? They were the shorter chassis 445 tractor. Here's a Jetstar, which is the closest thing here that I can show you to what a 445 utility was. This is just an updated 445 utility, which is what those two prototype crawlers were based off of. This one though is about 2/3 of the way to being a production 2-star crawler. It has the progressive first part of travel is steering clutch release, second part is brake steering levers, so that simplified the operator's platform quite a bit. But beyond that, it still has the regular utility clutch. They just fabbed up a longer clutch pedal to reach up to this platform. We still have the straight stick, 5-speed forward, 1 reverse transmission, and then the high-low range ampli-torque unit is still in place, which doubled those speeds. So, of course, a production 2-star would have had the reverse shuttle in it, so this one is not there yet. But there are a lot of 10X pieces on the undercarriage still and the final drives. You look back here, these were all just fabricated out of steel. They were formed, cut, welded. They machined it where they needed to on the inside for bearings. The PTO shaft back here That's just plugging a hole. There's nothing even in mesh with the gear. That's kind of an interesting little deal. So they had a provision back there, but then they never ended up utilizing it. Super heavy duty drawbar on it. The seat styling is very similar to a 2-star, the way they kind of replicated the slope of the hood. Fuel tank is in the seat, and one interesting thing the owner showed me, where the fuel tank typically is on a 445 and even on X253, they turn that into the hydraulic tank. You can see the suction line comes out from the bottom down there. And this used to be the tractor dash. They just plugged the hole for the steering column. Otherwise, the throttle and everything pretty much in the same spot. Still has the 445 cast iron cross up at the front behind this very heavy duty hard nose grill guard. And of course, it's arranged just like a 2-star would have been. So the hydraulic cylinders anchored to that hard nose, act directly on the blade, but it still carries the 445 badging. And here's the interesting part. If you look at the serial number on this, which it's way up in under the foot plate, up in there, it has the serial number of the production 445 utility tractor, serial number 2. So being that both of these prototype crawlers are heavily based off of the 445 utility, was that one pre-production parts or just pieces that they pulled off the line? Because that is just straight X numbers on the serial tag here, whereas this one bears serial number 2, second 445 utility off the line. Who knows what the real story is here. I just noticed you can see one of the 10X numbers on the idler spoke right there. Virtually the whole undercarriage on this is all 10X. So definitely still a pre-production machine, and I would still call it a prototype, being that it still had 10X and there were so many oddities about it. Very interesting machine. Big G 1355. Very nice job on this one. We've got a UB Special diesel. Lots of plumbing on these. Certainly a lot going on. This side's a little cleaner over here. 2 batteries. Yes, that is a Minneapolis-Moline backblade on a 335. Now, very similar to a 445. I believe it was the same stroke, just a smaller bore on the 335. And you can also tell the 335 cross grill has 2 fewer holes, 2 less holes on the front than the big cross on a 445. But nice looking job on that one. Got a nice looking little, it looks like an R here that is hooked to a very nice Minneapolis-Moline 2-bottom plow. And here is a very rare piece to find. This was the Minneapolis-Moline trip hitch for their plows. They did it differently from everyone else. The Moline plows just had a solid ring welded to the front of the drawbar beam, but they put their trip release on the drawbar of the tractor, and that's why so many Minneapolis-Moline plows now do not have the original hitch intact, because without this piece right here, you were running a rigid hitch, and if you were in rocky ground like we have, you were taking some serious risks. But it even has the correct Firestone tapered rear wheel on it, rear tire. Got all the decals on the back of the mold boards. This is a pretty nice looking plow. Nubs on the rubber tires yet. Next to it, this looks like a Z with a full cultivator in place. Done very well. Wide front Z, and if I didn't know any better, I would say this might be my old corn picker. I had one just like it, a Model SH. I'm thinking it might be, because I kind of remember that being bent out right there. Sold it a few years ago to a gentleman very near here. Yep, it's an SH. This might be the one that I used to have. It looks very, very familiar. I remember the decals. I remember all the part number stampings in there. It was a decent old original condition picker. Looks like they've been using it a bit. I'm sure this is my old one. Reunited. I just didn't have a use for it. We have another very nice 3-bottom Minneapolis-Moline plow. Fixed up just like the 2. And I think this one is a U. Let's see if we can see anything on the tag. UTS, yep, so it's based off of a U. Kind of an earlier version of a 5-star. Big heavy cast beam front axle. They all had big oil filters on them too. Here's a patina tractor. It's an LP version, UB Special with the LP. So it's got the shaved heads, the higher compression, and the plumbing. Oh, for the plumbing. It just goes everywhere. Jumper lines heading here, there, around, up, through. Very interesting tractor. We got some bigger ones on this line. M670, G900, running duals. Another G900. Look at all the weights on this one. Suitcase weights on the front. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. Authentic Minneapolis-Moline. We were all weighted up on the back. Look at these. Running 3 of them. Wow. 10A numbers. That's all Moline weights too. Nice 3-point attachments on the back. Takeouts. Nice suspension seat. Correct decals all over. This one's nice. That is a very nice 900. Well, everybody, that concludes the pre-show walkthrough Thursday evening. I stopped counting at 75 Minneapolis-Molines, and there are a few more, and there are trailers that are still showing up sporadically. So I also expect for there to be some new arrivals tomorrow morning yet too. Pretty good turnout of the Prairie Gold this year. Catch up with you all tomorrow. All right, everybody, it's Friday morning. Remember, Angry Bob King is walking off as we speak. We've got the X231 display set up, and yeah, pictures in place. We've got a little bit of a picture book to page through. We got the X231 placard out here. Some of the pieces that blew up or wore horrendously or bent, or the old nasty welded shifter made the show, as well as our puzzle piece display of the differential. So I'm going to get the truck moved back out of here before it gets too busy, but everything's looking good inside the gazebo here. Plenty of things going on, so catch back up with y'all in a bit. Well, everybody, it turned into another really busy day. I don't even know where it went. Talked to a lot of people from as far away as let's see, we had Michigan, Illinois, Missouri, Oregon. That one guy came a long ways. So very good turnout from the channel so far. We've got the X231 display picked back up, and it's in the back of the silver truck, because if anybody took any of those one-of-a-kind parts overnight, I'd pretty much be done. So we'll do another walk around in here. I didn't really cover these very well at all. This prototype, I'm not up on what the model was, but it is basically supposed to be, or was supposed to be, a cheaper version of the Minneapolis-Moline R, like more affordable, a little bit more bare bones. It had quite the different styling on the front. They set the radiator out a long ways. Had a very interesting X-numbered fan drive shaft with a belt, went all the way to the front. The air cleaner bolts directly to the side panel of the hood, or of the hood piece. And just some really odd, like a bare bones bent steel seat frame on a spring, super basic. They had these weird square axle housings though, which was pretty much only used on this and one other prototype. Funny cast iron PTO shield. I don't know how that was more affordable than a stamped 10, but it's got the EX number in it. Super long hand crank, of course, because it had to go in that long front end. Really neat little tractor, just something that didn't take off, but mystery linkage goes from the brake pedal all the way up into there. Haven't really figured that out yet, but neat deal. Under the tent here we have another interesting prototype. Now this is similar to the other one, the affordable R that was in the gazebo building over there. It has the same square axle housings on it. This one's been broken and gusseted at one point. You can see all the weld that they laid down. Of course, the square axle housing is strong 4 different ways, but a round axle housing is strong equally all the way around. But The whole back end is really odd. It's got the EX. Now that's the early version of the 10X casting numbers. It's got all EX casting numbers on the back end. Everything from basically the bell housing back is all really oddball stuff. You can see the pedals are just flat steel welded with a quick bend for the actual foot pedal. The brakes on the other side here are the same. This is an experimental IT. This one came from Illinois. But EX numbers again on the axle tubes. And the owner was here. He was showing me how they made this hood. This is a one-piece hood. It was welded, so there's a weld seam that goes along here. There's a matching one that comes down the other side, and if you catch it in a light just right, another weld seam goes across here. But under that paint, they sculpted it with lead. It's got the original lead on it yet. And he said one drawback of this tractor is if you ever had to go and like file the points, you have to take this whole hood off. And being lead, with so much of it on there, lead and steel, it was super heavy. So you had these screws and nuts back here, and you had the two clips, one on each corner at the front. And that was a big one-piece deal that you had to completely remove to do any kind of work on. But it doesn't quite have as long of a front end as the affordable R in there, but they have a hand crank that runs out to the front. We still have EX numbers on the bolster. The pedestal is prototype as well. Headlights built into the hood, and then all the vertical slats for the ventilation. It's neat how they cut it and sculpted it around all of that air intake, air filter. So another very interesting, very oddball tractor. PTO up off to the side. Different style seat suspension, still pretty basic, but it worked. And this is another interesting tractor. It's not a tried and true prototype, it's actually a clone. And it was meant to clone the old NT, which was going to be a more powerful version of the Model Z tractor. So what they did with this one, it replicates an actual NT that was on their family's farm for testing back in the 1940s. And the way they hopped it up and made it a higher performance Z, it pretty much had a Z back end. It had a lot of U style sheet metal on the front, but it had the hydraulic valve 206 engine in it. Now this was a limited production run style engine, and it was all hydraulic valving to run, or a hydraulic actuation I should say, to run the intake and exhaust valves. And that was to A, run it quieter, but B, run it faster. So they could hop up this 206 engine with these hydraulic valves, get more RPM out of it and more power output, which made it a higher performing Z. And the owner was telling me about how this works. So the camshaft would run in here just like any other tractor, but there were buckets that the cam lobes acted upon. And those buckets had oil chambers above them. So every time a lobe lifted a bucket, it would displace the oil up to a spool valve that runs horizontally with the intake and exhaust valves across the cylinder heads. And that's how you got your valve train actuation. There was no mechanical link between the cam and the valve. It was all hydraulic. Now, the spool valves that are back here are custom lapped and matched to their bores. So you cannot take a spool valve out of one bore and throw it into another. All this stuff has to be put back exactly the way it was fitted. Another quirk of this engine is if you don't have oil in these chambers up here and 30 psi of oil pressure, the valves will not actuate and the engine will not start. And he even said that if this thing sits for an extended period of time, the oil will gradually seep down from these chambers. So you'd have to take these plugs out, fill them completely back up, because if you had any airspace up here, you wouldn't get your hydraulic actuation. So it definitely had its quirks, but it did work. And when it worked very well. And it was very quiet because you didn't have any of the clicking or tapping noises that are just normally associated with a valve train. But very, very interesting tractor still. Even though it's not the tried and true NT, it's as close as we will ever see to one of them. So just odd. Moline was definitely not afraid to try unproven designs and just build some really quirky stuff. A few new ones have rolled in today as well. I love these G706s. I drove one of these one time, a tractor like this, front wheel assist. These things sound awesome and they're just a beast. 1962. But they have a mean stance. Handsome tractor. Nice wide, flat operator's platform, huge gauge panel, and you look out across a hood that just seems like it's a mile long. Very, very nice rubber on these, almost brand new. It's twin, right on the other side. The old power cell injectors. Love that big drop down gearbox. It's been since power up to a gigantic front pumpkin. This one has the big center caps too on the front wheels. Yeah, just heft in that setup. Very, very powerful looking tractors. Love them. Well, as of right now, this is Friday evening. There's I think 130 Minneapolis-Molines on site, so pretty good turnout all in all. We will wrap up for the rest of the evening, and I will check back with you all tomorrow. Looks like rain coming on Sunday, so tomorrow, Saturday, might be our leaving day. We'll just have to see what happens. Catch up with you all again. Welcome back, everybody. It's a nice morning, Saturday morning here at the show. Yeah, looking at the weather forecast, we are going to be pulling out here this afternoon. It's all right though. It's been a pretty good show so far. It's still rather early, just after 7 a.m. They still have the gazebo closed up. We've got the X231 display back in place, just ready for everything to happen. Hopefully we don't get any rain. Say we might have something coming through in the next hour. It's all right. I think it's going to look just fine. The sky's clear so far anyway. Just doing a little bit more of a walkabout here before it gets busy. So I want to show you all this. Pretty standard Minneapolis-Moline Model R tractor. All right, 4-cylinder gasoline engine. We've got brake pedals, pretty much come straight up in front of the axle housings. Hand clutch over here. Gasoline fuel tank here. You can see how the hood starts out rather wide, but then narrows as it goes back, joins in with the fuel tank. Seat is placed just aft of the rear end of the tractor a little bit. Let's compare that to something. In here under the tent, once again, we have this R. Now, quite a lot similar about it, but the more you look at it, the more you see it's just an oddball. It says it's an RLP prototype. First thing you'll notice, of course, is the big round LP tank at the back. And look at how you sight down the hood. It pretty much stays the same width, but it goes from flatter at the top, at the front, to following the round contour of that LP tank. That is just neat. And then you look at more things. So look at the pedals, how they've been cut and then welded, and they can't back. Looks like it still has the hand clutch. But what they did, instead of having both the brake pedals on one side, we have the right one on the right side, left one on the left side. But once again, that's been cut, notched, welded, brought back, and you can see the seat is also set quite a ways further back off of the tail end of the rear end housing. We have a lot of extra plumbing in here, of course, for the LP mod. Battery's been relocated up here. Gauge panel is just on a flat piece of steel. It's been bent around. Looks like light switch right there. This looks to be possibly a hydraulic tank of some kind. We've got some sort of a rock shaft that runs across. A tillage implement would have been connected to that. And of course your valving for the LP tank. Yeah, I believe a cylinder, hydraulic cylinder would have went between there for actuation. And I believe if we look on the other side, yeah, we have a lot of, here's an ensign, looks like some kind of a separator possibly, and with a big regulator, and basically the carburetor, what you'd call it, meters the LP on into the engine. So it's still set up as a gasoline style engine, spark ignition, but it just runs off of LP. I would have assumed that they would have increased the compression ratio a little bit on that, because typically LP engines need a higher compression ratio to run well on it, but this is the only one of these that I've ever seen that's configured like this. Here's the Minneapolis-Moline feature building. Pretty nice display outside the entrance there. A few tractors parked around. A few parts around for sale. Everything in the building was still covered up. It's pretty early yet. We're just doing our walkabout here before it gets busy. 604 front wheel assist. Well, we had a pop-up rainstorm. I think X231's, she's not any more mean than she used to be, so. But we found Moline Dan from YouTube. We're all seeking refuge under the canopy until the weather blows over, so I checked out your channel. You got a lot of stuff going on there.
A lot of videos, isn't there?
Some U302 stuff.
I got a couple.
You got some Z's. You got, there was a bigger one on there too. I didn't really get the read on.
There's quite a few that I don't have, but I have quite a few.
Adding more all the time, right?
Yeah.
So Moline Dan on YouTube. I will pop a link to his channel in the description down below. Click on it, check it out, like, subscribe, hit the notifications button. We got Kyle Christ over here too. Kyle doesn't like being on YouTube though. Hopefully the rain ends soon. I think she's letting up already. So.
Yeah, I think so. You need it around here though.
But you'll have some footage of the show, I'm assuming.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'll have some stuff hitting the feed next week. Moline Dan, go check them out.
Appreciate it. Thanks for watching.
Well, everybody, we're about 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon. X231 bits are loaded back into the pickup. Double checking all of my hookups back here. Already done a light check. The rest of the parts are in the toolbox, and we've got X253 loaded and bound. Jordan was a excellent show. We'll have a little bit of a recap here once we get home, but we've got about 4 hours on the road and we have to get moving, trying to beat the rain. Catch up with you all in a bit. Okay, everybody, it is the next day. I want to wrap the episode right here, hopefully as briefly as possible, but I think by now you all know I can be rather long-winded. I'll do my best. The return trip back home from Jordan went very well, although it was difficult packing up midday on Saturday like we did, because that's the pinnacle of activity for any tractor show. That's when the most people are in attendance. There's the most things going on, the most things to see and do. But with the weather that was forecast for Sunday and the length of our drive, that was the schedule we had to keep. I had 317 miles on the truck odometer, so the two prototypes had a little bit of a out and back trip, and thankfully everything went very well. Shout out really quick to the channel members that showed up. We had Tim Pranky, One Crazy Nordlander, Kyle Christ, and Angry Bob King. And if I forgot anybody, I sincerely apologize. I talked to so many people there this weekend, it's hard to keep track. But a big thanks to Angry Bob King. He stuck around for probably 5 or 6 hours on Friday, helped me work the X231 display, and he's so familiar with the channel. He was like, oh yeah, people would come up and we'd be asking questions, and he was like, yeah, this broke like that, and then it exploded that, and they fixed it like that. And I'm like, I'm going to have to put this guy on the payroll because he's literally cut my workload in half. I also want to show you all what we brought back from Jordan. First off, again, these placards that were created for me and gifted to me for the X231 project and the show. Again, much appreciated. Restoration supplies. I picked up a lot of detail type things that are going to be very handy. Stay here, dude. For the X231 restoration. Anytime I'm around those vendors, I like to pick up everything that I know I'm going to need. This was very interesting. A neat find. It's a World War II era Minneapolis-Moline deck of playing cards, and they're all here, right down to the information cards that talk about Minneapolis-Moline's wartime efforts, and the Joker is even present. Neat bit of memorabilia from the Minneapolis-Moline company of that time. We've got souvenirs, complimentary of Scott Carver Thresher Show, in appreciation for the Moline exhibitors. I was also provided with more X253 high-quality archive photocopies, some of which I had not yet had, even on into the evolution of the Golden Cat, as they called it, when we're getting right up near the official production run of the 2-star crawler. I just love any of this old archive stuff, the information that's contained in these photos. Excellent. And the final thing I want to show y'all, and this was really a surprise on the weekend. This was probably 1 p.m. yesterday on Saturday, and we are like minutes away from the parade. I've got my truck in the middle of everything, and I've been trying to throw the X231 bits back in and get the canopy down and the table up, and people have been coming and going, and I've just been talking to people like crazy and trying to get stuff done. And seniors on the phone, hey, can I bring my truck in and get that stuff? And I'm like, hurry, because the parade's about to start. We need to get out of everybody's way. And a gentleman approaches me and hands me this brick. And at first, I was just, oh yeah, what's this? And trying not to spend any more time on it than I had to. And then he hands me the certificate as well. And I started reading it, and I immediately just felt like a complete heel, because I was so wrapped up in everything that was going on and everything that I wanted to do, and we still needed to get the crawler to the trailer. And this is a really, really special piece of history from the Minneapolis-Moline company. And on the certificate, it says, "Be it known, this brick is authentic in its source, as being one left from the construction of the smokestack for the foundry of the Minneapolis-Moline Lake Street automotive plant." And it is brick number 01 of 50. And these are the things that, to me, are just the pinnacle of history. This is a tangible link to the Minneapolis-Moline company that still exists. We can touch it, we can pick it up, we can hold it, we can look at it. It's interesting too, because I don't know if the GoPro lens is going to skew it. There's a slight radius to the brick's construction, and it makes sense. Smokestacks are round. I didn't realize that, but this is part of where it all started. Everything we've got here, everything that we do. So why do we do all this? Why do, people ask a lot of times, why do you search out these machines and look for parts and obsess over details and do all the research and navigate around clotheslines of painted parts for weeks on end, do all the loading, all the hauling, dealing with the traffic, offloading, exhibiting at shows, endless polishing, trying to avoid rain, towing back, the expenses incurred? It's all for things like this and the ribbon. All right, you get the exhibitor ribbon. And I look at this and I remember the gentleman that says, "Hi, I wanted to come out here and meet you and see all the interesting and rare tractors." And I said, "Where are you from?" And he says, "Oregon." And I'm like, wow. And the other exhibitors that drove in from 3-4 states away, hauled machines, brought semi-loads full of equipment in some cases, and did all the same things and went to all the same efforts that Senior and I did to get all of our stuff there. So it's a neat, it's just a neat memory from the weekend, from the show, from everything that happened, everyone you met, everyone you talked to, and everything you did. So that's why we do it. Thanks for watching, everybody.